The colony ship Horizon Dawn drifted silently through the endless dark of space. Its journey had lasted almost 3 years, and now it approached its destination, a half-terraformed planet called Lyra. The world was not ready for permanent cities yet, but the first stage of human settlement was about to begin. Inside the ship, life followed a strict routine. Scientists studied weather models. Engineers checked the engines and power systems. Guards monitored the scanners for any sign of danger. Everyone had a clear role, and each person worked hard to prove themselves useful to the mission. Among them was Myra, the ship's cook. She was not a scientist or an engineer. She didn't build machines, she didn't repair the ship's engines, and she didn't calculate oxygen levels. Her job was simple: feed the crew. To many, it did not sound as important as the others. But Myra knew that even in the coldest part of space, humans still needed something familiar: a warm meal. The kitchen was small, squeezed between the storage bay and the dining hall. Metal counters lined the walls, and shelves were filled with sealed food packs, spices, and vegetables grown in the ship's hydroponic garden. Myra often joked that the kitchen was the heart of the ship, though most crew members laughed and said the engine deserved that title. Still, Myra believed she had a purpose. Each meal she made brought comfort to the tired crew. When long hours of research made their minds heavy, food gave them energy again. When homesickness filled their thoughts, the smell of a cooked dish reminded them of Earth. She might not hold a weapon or fix a reactor, but she gave them something worth fighting for: a feeling of home. On this day, Myra woke earlier than the others. She washed her hands, tied her hair back, and began preparing breakfast. She diced vegetables from the hydroponic trays, set out packs of grain, and mixed spices with care. The quiet sound of her knife against the board was the only noise in the kitchen. As the first scent of cooking spread through the corridor, footsteps soon followed. Ryan, one of the guards, stepped inside. He was tall and serious, but his eyes softened when he saw the food. "You're up early again," he said. "Someone has to keep you all alive," Myra replied with a small smile. "Engines can't run on empty stomachs." Soon after, the dining hall filled with chatter as more crew members gathered. Plates clinked against tables, and laughter echoed as they ate. For a short time, the weight of their mission faded, replaced by warmth and comfort. Myra listened quietly as they discussed weather patterns of Lyra, power checks, and supply lists. She didn't always understand the technical details, but she enjoyed hearing their excitement. After the meal, Captain Ella entered the dining hall. He was a calm man with sharp eyes that always seemed to notice everything. He nodded at Myra as he passed. "Good work, Myra. Keep the crew strong. We'll need it soon," he said. Myra bowed her head. Compliments from the captain were rare, and his words gave her quiet pride. Later that day, Myra went back to the kitchen to clean and prepare for the next meal. As she opened one of the storage crates, she noticed something strange. Inside the crate, among ordinary food packs, was a small sealed container she had never seen before. Its surface was black with faint silver lines running across it, almost like veins of light frozen in metal. She touched it carefully. The material felt cool, smoother than any container she knew. A small symbol was marked on the top, not in English, not in any language she recognized. It looked alien. Myra frowned. She checked the supply list on her datapad, but there was no mention of such a container. Every crate was supposed to be checked and recorded, yet this one had no record. Her heart beat faster. She thought about reporting it to the captain, but something inside her told her to wait. The kitchen was her space, her world. If this container had been placed here, maybe it was meant for her to find. She set it on the counter and stared at it for a long moment. Curiosity burned inside her. What was inside? Was it food? Was it dangerous? Or was it something rare, something forgotten in storage for years? She almost opened it, but then she stopped. A voice in her mind whispered caution. On a ship this far from Earth, mistakes could be deadly. Still, temptation tugged at her thoughts. The container felt like a secret, waiting to be revealed. As she cleaned the rest of the kitchen, her eyes kept drifting back to it. Every time she passed the counter, the silver lines seemed to shimmer faintly in the light, as if the container was alive, watching her. Myra shook her head and forced herself to focus on her tasks. But deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. Something had entered her kitchen that did not belong, and whatever it was, it would change everything. That night, as the ship sailed closer to Lyra, the kitchen was silent once again. The mysterious container sat in the shadows, waiting. Myra lay awake in her bunk, unable to stop thinking about it. For the first time in her life, she felt that her small role on the ship might lead to something much bigger. The next morning, Myra returned to the kitchen before anyone else was awake. She wanted to cook breakfast early, but she also had another reason. Her eyes were drawn to the mysterious black container that still sat on the counter, untouched since yesterday. She approached it slowly, as if it might move on its own. The silver lines on its surface glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Myra placed her hand on it. The metal was cool but seemed to warm under her touch. Her mind filled with questions. Who put this inside the supplies? Why was it not recorded in the list? And why did it end up in her kitchen, of all places? Myra whispered to herself, maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just old storage. But she didn't believe her own words. She had worked in the kitchen for years and knew every tool, every pack, every container. This one was different. It didn't belong. After a moment of hesitation, she pressed gently on the top. With a soft hiss, the seal broke. The container opened, releasing a faint mist that smelled faintly sweet, like fresh soil after rain. Inside lay several root-like pieces, glowing faintly with teal light. Their surface shimmered, almost like glass, but when she touched one carefully with her finger, it felt soft, like a vegetable. Her breath caught. It was food, or at least, it looked like food. She quickly closed the container again and sat down, staring at it. Her heart raced. Should she tell the captain? Or should she study it herself first? Her cook's instinct whispered inside her. Food was her world. She could not ignore what she had found. She thought of the crew, tired from their endless journey. What if this was something special, something that could bring them new strength? Myra shook her head, unsure. It could be dangerous, she said quietly. But another thought grew stronger, what if it's safe? What if it's a gift? Later, when the crew gathered for breakfast, she tried to focus on her normal routine. She cooked their usual meal: grains, vegetables, a little spice. They ate, laughed, and spoke about the landing plans for Lyra. Yet Myra's thoughts kept drifting back to the container. After the meal, when the others had gone, Myra cleaned up quickly. She opened the container again. The glowing roots seemed to call to her, as if waiting. Carefully, she cut a tiny piece from one of them. The knife sliced through easily, releasing a faint glow in the air. The scent was rich, earthy, and strange, yet not unpleasant. Myra placed the small piece into a pot of boiling water. The liquid quickly turned a pale teal color, glowing faintly. She stared in awe. She had never seen anything like this. The root dissolved slightly, spreading its color through the water, but the steam that rose smelled warm and inviting. She dipped a spoon into the liquid, lifted it, and let a drop fall on her tongue. For a moment, her body froze. The taste was unlike anything she had known: sharp but sweet, earthy yet light, almost as if every flavor of nature had been combined into one. Her senses sharpened. She felt more awake, more alive, her mind clearer than before. Even her heartbeat felt stronger. Myra gasped and quickly put the spoon down. This is not normal," she whispered. The experience frightened her, but also filled her with wonder. If a single drop could make her feel this alive, what would happen if the crew ate it? Temptation pressed harder on her heart. She imagined their tired faces brightening, their heavy steps turning light, their moods lifting. She wanted to give them this gift. But the danger haunted her thoughts. What if it hurt them? What if it poisoned them slowly? She closed the container again and locked it in the storage cabinet. Still, her mind would not let it go. That evening, when dinner time came, she made her usual dishes. The crew gathered again, unaware of the secret Myra kept hidden. They laughed about landing preparations and teased each other about who would be the first to step on Lyra's soil. As she served the food, her hands hesitated. She almost reached for the cabinet. She almost chose to add just a tiny piece of the root to the stew. But at the last second, she stopped. Her heart told her it was not yet time. Instead, she watched the crew closely as they ate, wondering how they would react to something beyond human food. Later that night, when the kitchen was silent and empty, Myra returned once more. She sat on the bench, staring at the locked cabinet. The strange ingredient was more than food. She could feel it. It was like a secret waiting to be shared, a story hidden inside its glowing surface. She thought about Earth, about the long journey of humanity into space. Perhaps this was not an accident. Perhaps this was meant to be found. She whispered to herself, tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow. And with that, Myra stood and turned off the lights. But even in the dark, the faint teal glow of the container seemed to shine through the cracks of the cabinet door, as if reminding her that it was waiting, and that her choice could change everything. The ship Horizon Dawn drifted steadily toward Lyra, its engines humming softly through the long metal halls. Life on board continued in its usual rhythm. Scientists compared data, engineers checked systems, and guards patrolled. Yet, in the small kitchen, something unusual was waiting. Myra stood at the counter, staring at the cabinet where the black container was locked away. She had tried to ignore it for 2 days, but the thought never left her mind. Every time she cooked, she felt as if the glowing roots inside were calling to her. That morning, when she entered the kitchen before sunrise, she finally made her choice. She unlocked the cabinet, lifted the container, and opened it. The teal light glowed softly, filling the room with a gentle shine. The roots seemed almost alive, as though they had been waiting for this moment. Myra whispered, just a little. Only a small piece. Enough to test. She cut off a thin slice and added it to the stew she was preparing. The liquid changed color immediately, glowing faintly under the surface. The aroma that spread through the kitchen was unlike anything she had cooked before, sweet, warm, and strangely fresh, as if it carried the air of forests and oceans that did not belong to the ship. Her hands trembled as she stirred the pot. She kept telling herself it would be safe. After all, the small taste she had tested earlier had not harmed her. Instead, it had made her feel alive in a way she had never experienced. But she still worried. She knew this was against the rules. She knew she was gambling with something she could not fully understand. When breakfast time came, the crew entered the dining hall as usual. Ryan, the guard, gave a tired smile as he sat down. The scientists came with their data pads still in hand, discussing their models for Lyra's climate. Even Captain Ella joined them today, his calm face serious as always. Myra served the stew, her heart pounding in her chest. She placed bowls in front of each person, her hands almost shaking. The crew dug in without hesitation. The first spoonfuls went down, and Myra waited, holding her breath. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Ryan looked up, surprised. "This tastes different," he said. His voice carried no alarm, only curiosity. Another crew member, Lena, laughed lightly. "Different? It tastes amazing. What did you do, Myra? This is not like the usual grain stew." Myra's stomach tightened. She forced a smile and said, "Just a new spice from the supplies. Thought I'd try it." The crew nodded and continued eating. Soon, Myra noticed changes. Their tired faces brightened. Their voices grew more lively. The scientists spoke faster, their minds sharper, their words clearer. Even Ryan, usually so quiet, laughed with energy. Captain Ella set his spoon down and looked directly at Myra. His sharp eyes studied her for a long moment. "This meal," he said slowly, "is unusual." Myra froze, unable to speak. But the captain did not ask further. Instead, he leaned back and folded his arms, as if waiting to see what would happen next. As the crew finished their meal, the changes became more obvious. One of the engineers noticed his tired hands no longer trembled after long hours of work. Another said her mind felt sharper than ever before, like a heavy fog had lifted. They all felt stronger, more awake, more alive. After they left the dining hall, Myra remained behind, cleaning quietly. Her heart was still racing. She had done it. She had given them the route. And it had worked. No one was sick. No one was harmed. Instead, they were better, much better. But fear still lingered in her mind. What if the effects grew dangerous later? What if the ingredient carried a hidden cost she could not see yet? That night, the crew was still full of energy. Their work continued late into the evening. No one complained of fatigue. The scientists laughed as they compared notes, solving problems faster than before. Myra watched from the shadows, both proud and anxious. Later, when the ship grew quiet, Myra returned to the kitchen alone. She opened the container again and stared at the glowing roots. They seemed brighter now, as if pleased to have been used. She thought about the voices she had begun to hear faintly, whispers that came only when she stood near them. She could not understand the words, but she felt as if the roots were trying to speak. Myra whispered, "What are you? Why are you here?" The roots, of course, gave no answer. But she could not shake the feeling that this was not simple food. It was something more, something that carried a message, something that wanted to be discovered. She closed the container carefully and placed it back in the cabinet. For now, she would keep her secret. The crew believed it was only a new spice, and she would let them believe that. As Myra left the kitchen, she thought of Earth. Humans had traveled far, across stars, searching for a place to call home. Perhaps this route was part of that journey. Perhaps it was not an accident that she had found it. The temptation was no longer just about taste. It was about the mystery hidden inside the food, a mystery that could change everything. And deep inside, Myra knew this was only the beginning. The days passed quickly on the horizon dawn. Ever since Myra had added the glowing root to the stew, the crew seemed brighter, sharper, and stronger. Their tasks that once took hours were now finished in half the time. Their voices carried more laughter, their eyes more light. To them, it felt like a gift, a sudden burst of energy during the long journey. But to Myra, it felt heavier than that. She could not stop thinking about the container in the cabinet. Every night, when the ship fell quiet, she would return to the kitchen and stare at the glowing roots. Each time she opened it, she felt something strange, as if the room itself was no longer empty. One evening, as she sat alone at the counter, she thought she heard it for the first time. A faint whisper. It was soft, like wind passing through a narrow tunnel, yet it seemed to form a shape, almost like a word. Myra froze, her heart racing. She looked around the kitchen. Nothing moved. The walls were silent, the light steady. She whispered, "Who's there?" No one answered. But when she leaned closer to the container, she felt the sound again, a breath, a murmur, impossible to understand but strangely alive. Myra quickly closed the lid and stepped back. Her hands trembled. "I'm imagining things," she said to herself. But deep down, she knew she wasn't. The next day, she tried to stay away from the container. She focused on her usual cooking, making meals without the alien ingredient. Yet, when the crew ate, they noticed the difference. "It's not the same," Lena said, frowning slightly. The stew from 2 days ago, that one gave me more energy. It was amazing. Ryan nodded. I slept less last night, but I still felt strong. Today I'm already tired again. The others agreed. They began to ask Myra what she had done to that meal, what spice she had used, what recipe she had followed. Myra smiled faintly and said it was only a mix of herbs. But their eyes showed curiosity, even suspicion. That night, Myra returned to the kitchen again. She sat in the dark, staring at the cabinet. The whispers had not left her mind. She needed to know more. Slowly, she opened the container. The teal glow spread across the room, gentle but alive. She leaned closer. The whispers returned. This time they were clearer. They were not in any language she knew, yet the sound carried a rhythm, almost like music. It was as if the roots were trying to speak directly to her, not with words but with feelings. She felt warmth, strength, and something else, an invitation. Her breath quickened. You want me to use you, she whispered. The whispers seemed to hum in reply, soft and steady. Myra felt a shiver down her spine. It was not fear, not exactly. It was something deeper, the weight of knowing she was touching something not made by human hands. The next morning, Myra decided to test again. She cut another small piece of the root and added it to a side dish. She served it carefully, watching the crew's reaction. As soon as they ate, the change returned. Their voices grew louder, their eyes brighter. One of the scientists solved a calculation in minutes that had puzzled him for weeks. Another crew member said she felt her muscles stronger, as if she had been training for months. Captain Ella, however, did not eat much. He studied Myra silently, his sharp eyes filled with quiet suspicion. After the meal, as the others left, he stayed behind. Myra, he said calmly, you've been adding something new. Haven't you? Myra froze. Her mind raced for an answer. Finally, she said, yes. A small ingredient I found in the supplies. I thought it might help the crew. Ella's expression did not change. Where did it come from? Myra hesitated, then lowered her eyes. I don't know. The captain stood in silence for a long moment. Then he said, be careful. A gift can also be a trap. With that, he left the dining hall. Myra stood there alone, her hands clenched tightly. His words echoed in her mind. A gift can also be a trap. That night, she could not sleep. She returned to the kitchen once again. The whispers welcomed her. This time they felt stronger, almost insistent. She touched the glowing root with her hand, and the voices surged like a wave through her mind. She closed her eyes. For a moment, she saw something, a star map, faint and broken, as if drawn in light. She saw planets, symbols, and finally, she saw Earth. Myra gasped and pulled her hand away. The vision faded. The whispers grew softer, almost disappointed. Her heart pounded. The roots were not just food. They were something more, something connected to knowledge far beyond her understanding. She whispered to the empty room, what are you trying to show me? No answer came. Only the quiet hum of the ship and the faint glow of the roots. Myra knew now that she could not ignore them. The whispers would not stop. The crew already felt their power. And she herself had seen something no human should have seen. The kitchen, once the most ordinary place on the ship, had become the center of a mystery. And Myra, the simple cook, was standing at the edge of a secret that could change their entire journey. The whispers did not leave Myra's mind. Every time she entered the kitchen, she felt them stronger, pressing gently against her thoughts. It was no longer only sound, it was images, feelings, flashes of light that came and vanished too quickly to understand. Myra knew one thing for certain, the glowing root was not just food. It carried something inside, something far beyond human cooking. One evening, after the crew had gone to rest, Myra sat at the counter with the container open in front of her. The roots glowed softly, filling the room with teal light. She placed her hands near them, not touching, just feeling. The whispers rose again, flowing into her mind like a stream of water. This time, she did not pull away. Her vision blurred. Shapes appeared in her thoughts, lines, patterns, and then, a map. Stars stretched out before her, glowing like dots of fire. She saw circles drawn around some of them, as if marking paths. One star shone brighter than the rest. She recognized it. Earth. Myra gasped and opened her eyes. Her hands shook. The message had been clear. These roots were not random. They were connected to Earth. Somehow, some way, an alien hand had left them here for humans to find. The next morning, Myra could not hide her thoughts. She was quieter than usual as she served breakfast. Ryan noticed first. "You look tired," he said, frowning. "Are you sleeping at all?" "I'm fine," Myra answered quickly. But her voice lacked strength. Captain Ella also watched her closely. He said nothing, but his eyes seemed to know she carried a secret. After the meal, Lena, the young scientist, stayed behind. She looked at Myra with curiosity. "That stew, the one you made before. It was different. It helped me think faster, clearer. I've never felt like that before." "Myra, what are you using?" Myra hesitated. For days she had carried this weight alone. She wanted to tell someone, but fear held her back. Yet Lena's eyes were kind, not demanding. Carefully, Myra opened the cabinet and showed her the container. Lena's mouth fell open. "What is that?" "I don't know," Myra whispered. "But it's not just food. It speaks." Lena leaned closer, staring at the glowing roots. "This isn't human. Where did it come from?" "I found it in the supplies." "No record. No name." "Nothing," Myra said. "But when I use it in cooking, it changes people. It makes them stronger. And when I touch it, it shows me things. A star map. Earth at the center." Lena's hands trembled. "A message," she said softly. "Encoded inside the food." They sat in silence, staring at the container. The thought was almost impossible, yet undeniable. The roots carried knowledge, as if an ancient civilization had hidden their story in something as simple as food. That night, Lena brought a small scanning device from the science lab together. She and Myra tested a piece of the root. The scanner beeped, lines of data filling the small screen. Lena's eyes widened. "It's not just organic. It's coded. Myra, the structure of this thing, it's like language. Information locked inside the molecules." Myra whispered, "So the whispers, they're real?" "Yes," Lena said. "It's trying to communicate." The discovery left them both silent. Myra stared at the root with new fear and respect. It was not just a strange plant. It was a message left for humans, carried through time and space, waiting for someone to listen. But who had left it? And why? Over the next days, Myra and Lena continued their secret study. At night, when the rest of the crew slept, they worked quietly in the kitchen. Slowly, patterns began to emerge. The roots carried maps, coordinates, even fragments of symbols that looked like writing. Myra felt both awe and dread. "It's like they knew we would come," she said one evening, her voice low. Lena nodded. "Or maybe they wanted us to. Maybe they were waiting for humans." The thought sent chills down Myra's spine. Humanity had always believed itself small compared to the stars. But what if another species had seen them differently? What if someone, long ago, had chosen them for something greater? One night, while studying, the whispers grew louder than ever. Myra closed her eyes and let them in. This time, she saw more than stars. She saw figures tall, shadowy forms standing beside glowing plants like the root. They moved as if tending a garden, their hands shaping light itself. Then one of them turned, and though Myra could not see a face, she felt a deep sense of recognition. She pulled away, gasping. Lena grabbed her arm. "What did you see?" Myra shook her head, her voice trembling. "Not just maps. Not just food. They were people, or something like people. And they left this for us." Lena stared at the glowing root. "Myra, this could change everything we know about humanity's place in the galaxy." But before they could continue, the kitchen door slid open. Captain Ella stepped inside. His sharp eyes swept over them, then locked on the open container. "So," he said quietly, "this is what you've been hiding." Myra froze, her heart pounding. The secret was no longer hers alone. Captain Ella stood in the doorway of the kitchen, his arms crossed, his expression calm but sharp. The teal glow from the container lit his face faintly. Myra and Lena froze, caught in the middle of their secret study. For a long moment, no one spoke. The hum of the ship's engines filled the silence. Finally, Ella stepped forward. "I knew something was different. The crew is sharper, stronger. Too sharp. Too strong. And it began with your meals, Myra." His eyes moved to the glowing roots. "So this is the cause." Myra lowered her head. "Captain, I only wanted to help. The crew needed strength, and this gave it to them." "I didn't mean to hide anything. You hid it for days," Ella interrupted. His voice wasn't angry, but firm. "That is not a small mistake." Lena quickly spoke up. "Captain, please listen. This is more than food. It's a message. The roots hold information, maps, symbols, maybe even a history. We've been scanning them. It's real." Ella studied the container for a long time. His sharp eyes softened only slightly. "A message," he repeated. "Then it's not just a gift. It's a signal. And signals are always noticed." Before Myra could ask what he meant, the ship's alarm suddenly blared. A sharp voice echoed through the intercom, "Captain, unknown ships detected. They've just appeared on long-range scanners." Ella's face hardened. He turned to Myra and Lena. "Seal this container. Do not touch it until I return." Then he rushed out, his boots pounding against the floor. Myra and Lena stared at each other, their hearts racing. Unknown ships? That had never happened in all their journey. Within minutes, the ship was alive with movement. Guards ran to their stations. Engineers checked power systems. The hum of the engines grew louder as defense protocols activated. Myra stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, listening to the rising tension around her. She hurried to the observation deck. Through the wide window, she saw them, 3 dark ships, long and sharp like blades, sliding out of the stars. They moved with frightening speed, their surfaces reflecting no light. Ryan, the guard, stood beside her, his hand on his weapon. His jaw tightened. "They don't look friendly." The dark ships drew closer, and a strange static filled the ship's comms. Then, for the first time, a voice broke through, deep, rough, and full of anger. "Humans," it said. "You have taken what does not belong to you. Return it, or be destroyed." The crew froze. Everyone glanced at one another, fear flashing in their eyes. Captain Ella stood tall at the center of the deck. His voice was steady as he answered. "We are on a peaceful mission. What is it that you claim we have taken?" The voice replied with a growl. "The seed. The living food of the builders. It is not for your kind." Myra's heart dropped. They knew. Whoever these beings were, they had come for the roots. Ella signaled for the COMM to be cut. Then he turned sharply. "All defense stations ready. Shields up." The crew obeyed, but fear hung in the air. These ships were not random. They had followed the signal, just as Ella had warned. Myra returned to the kitchen in a rush. Lena was already there, staring at the glowing roots. They came for this, Lena whispered. They knew the moment we unlocked it. The signal went out. Myra's hands shook. What do we do? If we give it to them, they might leave us. But, what if it's more than food? What if it's meant for us? Before Lena could answer, the ship rocked violently. A beam of light had struck their shields. The enemy had fired. The intercom roared with Ella's voice. All hands! Prepare for battle! The kitchen trembled as the ship's weapons powered up. Myra clutched the counter, staring at the container. The whispers grew louder now, as if responding to the danger. She felt the pull in her mind, urging her, guiding her. Myra, Lena said urgently, the roots, they might help the ship. They react to energy. We saw it during the scans. Maybe if we connect them to the systems. Myra looked at her in shock. Use them to power the ship. Yes, Lena said firmly. It could work. Or it could kill us. But right now, we have no chance against those ships. Another strike shook the horizon dawn. Warning lights flashed red. Myra knew time was running out. She grabbed the container, holding it tightly. The whispers surged, filling her thoughts with images of light flowing through machines, energy turning brighter, stronger. She saw the ship glowing like the roots themselves. Myra! Lena shouted. Decide now. With trembling hands, Myra nodded. Together, they carried the container to the engine room. The engineers stared in confusion as Myra explained quickly. Ella himself arrived, his face set in stone. He listened, then gave a single sharp nod. Do it, he ordered. The roots were placed near the ship's power core. As soon as they touched the systems, the teal light spread like veins of fire through the machinery. The entire ship glowed faintly, humming with new strength. The next attack struck, but this time, the shields held firm. The crew gasped in disbelief. Ella's voice rang out. Return fire! The ship's cannons blazed with new power, brighter than ever before. The first enemy ship staggered under the blast. Myra stood in the engine room, clutching the empty container, her heart pounding. The whispers filled her mind, steady now, almost like a promise. The roots had chosen. Humanity would not be destroyed so easily. The battle outside raged across the stars. Bright streaks of light tore through the void as the horizon dawn fought against the three enemy ships. Yet this time, something was different. The teal energy from the roots had fused with the ship's systems, and every blast from their cannons struck harder than before. The shields shimmered but held strong, glowing faintly with the same teal hue that now pulsed through the engines. Myra stood with Lena in the engine room, watching as the glow pulsed like a heartbeat. Each pulse seemed alive, as though the ship itself had awakened. Engineers moved quickly, shouting readings, adjusting systems, but all eyes were wide with awe. Through the comms, Captain Ella's voice rang steady. One enemy ship down. 2 remain. Stay sharp. Cheers broke out across the crew, but fear still lingered. The remaining ships circled, striking again and again, but none of their attacks broke through. Instead, the roots seemed to draw power from each impact, glowing brighter, feeding the shields. Lena whispered to Myra, it's almost like they're protecting us. Like they want us to survive. Myra nodded. She could still hear the whispers faintly in her mind, no longer frightening but calm, almost encouraging. The roots had chosen them, or maybe, she thought, they had simply answered a call humans had not realized they were making. On the bridge, Ella studied the battle closely. Target the lead ship, he ordered. The horizon dawn turned sharply, firing with renewed strength. The teal glow surged with the shot, and the enemy vessel cracked apart, fragments scattering across the dark. Only one ship remained. But instead of pressing the attack, it stopped. The dark vessel floated in silence. Then the deep, rough voice returned over the comms. "You do not understand what you hold," it growled, slower this time, almost reluctant. "The seed is not meant for your hands. It is dangerous." Allah's eyes narrowed. He answered calmly. "Dangerous, yes. But also powerful. And now it is part of us." The voice was quiet for a long time. Then, to everyone's surprise, it said, "Then you are marked. Others will come. You are no longer hidden." The enemy ship turned and vanished into the darkness, leaving only silence behind. For several moments, the crew didn't breathe. Then relief washed over them. They had survived. But the words lingered, "Others will come." In the kitchen, hours later, Myra and Lena sat at the long metal table, exhausted. The container lay empty between them. The roots had vanished into the ship's systems, melted into wires, circuits, and engines. "It's gone," Lena said softly. "No samples, no study. Just, gone." Myra shook her head. "Not gone. It's part of us now. The ship is stronger, and so are we. It gave us a chance, and we took it." Lena leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "But what happens next? That ship said others would come. What if this was just the beginning?" Myra thought about it for a long moment. She remembered the whispers, the images of light and strength. The roots had not tried to harm them. They had given them power when they needed it most. "I don't think it was only about survival," Myra said finally. "Maybe it was a test. Maybe it wanted to see if we were ready." Captain Ella joined them later, his usual stern face softened by exhaustion. He sat across the table, folding his hands. "You both took a risk," he said. "You could have doomed the ship by connecting those roots. Instead, you saved us." Myra lowered her eyes. "Captain, I wasn't sure it would work. But I felt it. I knew it was the only choice." Ella gave a small nod. "Then you listened to something beyond fear. That's what leadership is." His gaze moved between them. "But make no mistake. This power will draw attention. We cannot hide anymore. From today, our journey is not just about exploration. It is about survival, and perhaps more than that, it is about proving who we are." Lena whispered, "Humanity's test." "Yes," Ella said. "And we passed the first one." Days passed, but the ship felt different now. The teal glow remained faintly in the halls, humming like a second heartbeat. The crew walked with new confidence, no longer ordinary travelers but guardians of something greater. Myra returned to her kitchen. She prepared meals as always, but now she felt each dish carried more than flavor. The crew looked at her with gratitude, remembering that her cooking had started it all. One evening, as the stars stretched endlessly outside the windows, Myra stood quietly by the counter. She placed her hands on the cool metal and whispered to herself, "Thank you." For a moment, she thought she felt a faint warmth beneath her palms, as if the ship itself had heard her. The horizon dawn continued forward, deeper into the unknown. Somewhere out there, others would come, drawn by the power of the roots. Battles and challenges lay ahead. But the crew was no longer afraid. They had been tempted by mystery in a kitchen, and in that choice, they had found strength. Myra, Lena, Ella, and the entire crew now carried something greater than themselves, not just survival, but hope. And as the teal glow pulsed gently through the ship, it seemed to whisper of a future where humanity's courage would light the darkest corners of the stars. A new dawn had begun.